Anyway, we're going over to a very special guest here. And who it is, it's Derek Shelmerdine. We've had him on before, haven't we? And he was so fascinating. I invited him back. I don't know what he talks about, you know.
No.
But anyway, he's rock and roll unravelled.
Oh.
So he unravels all the stories behind the rock and roll and everything else, you know, from early Beatles up to Pete Best. So we'll be talking Beatles.
Oh, marvellous. We don't often do that, you know.
We don't, because funny enough, when I was in Porto this morning, I was talking to this particular person, and I went, they said, where are you from? And I went, I'm from Liverpool. They went, oh, the Beatles, and no matter where you go in the world,
Aye.
the Beatles.
Yeah, you're right.
They're the most iconic band on the planet.
Billy Joel mentioned them yesterday on the radio. Billy Joel, he was talking to Harry Connick or something, and he's doing an interview, and the first thing he said was like, these working class Scouse lads, and he thought it was just a mock-up, and he saw them on TV and they were genuine, and he said after that his interest in music took off.
Well, that was Billy Joel. Yeah. He was married to a lovely woman.
Christy
Brinkley, yeah. Uptown Girl.
Yeah, marvellous record.
Anyway, there's Derek here, and Derek's on, and he's already rocking and rolling and ready to go. Hello, Derek.
Hi, Frank. Good to see you again.
And you, and you know, you're going to talk about the early Beatles, aren't you? Listen, can you do me a favour?
Of course.
Do you know Happy Xmas was over?
Yeah.
Could you fill us in on that? Because that's John, you know, John O'Hare, who's in the studio, myself. That's one of our favourite Christmas songs ever. And could you, you know, just have you got any idea? Can you fill us in on it?
Well, what happened was after the Beatles all parted, the Vietnam War was, and that single was associated with that particular campaign. But it was more than just the single itself. He had a whole series of concerts and all kinds of publicity going on with it. And interestingly enough, I don't know why, but it was released in America a year before it was released in the UK. I think it was 1771.
Oh.
Well, I heard, Derek, was that at the same time as the Bed-Ins, the famous Bed-Ins?
No, it was
a bit later, was it?
Because the Bed-Ins, he was still with the Beatles. Because
with Yoko?
I always remember them saying, waiting in the dock at Southampton. Mm-hmm. You know that?
Yeah.
You know, which is fantastic.
So Derek, that obviously that was a bit later on, but on the particular record, was that the only one that the Beatles ever kind of released as a proper Christmas single, or like John had released as a proper Christmas single?
It was actually. In fact, interestingly enough, the Beatles didn't release Christmas singles as such. Mm-hmm. It was only after they all went solo.
Solo, yeah.
They each released one. I mean, Paul McCartney had the Wonderful Christmas Time.
Oh, that's right.
George had one, I think it was called Ding Dong. And the last one was Ringo, but he released a Christmas album, actually, only a few years ago. So for some reason, they never actually released it.
But didn't he do, I'm sure, obviously, you'll know this, Derek. I'm sure that they did, you know, little records for the fans, you know, when just before the hit, the unbelievable height that they were, you know, singing like Merry Christmas or something like that, you know, little plastic things.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, for the fan clubs. Every year from about 1963, I think, was probably the first. Then every year they released a flexi single at Christmas time for them. And they also did shows every year as well down in London. They did about a week-long Christmas special show. But the only recording I could find when I was looking around for this was on, I think it was Saturday Club on the BBC. Yeah. They did something called Happy Crimble. And it was more of a talk and a bit of a joke, really. Yeah. But that was the only thing I can find. I found about them that was a Christmas song that was actually recorded by them.
Do you know what, Bill? You know, Derek, I'm sorry. You know what you're saying now? like Happy Crimble. That, you know, when I was a teenager, after that like came out, you know, the word Crimble, people were actually saying Happy Crimble, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's like George Harrison came out with grotty, didn't he?
That's right.
That's
yeah,
right.
well,
He actually came out with the word grotty, he said, you know, instead of grotesque. Someone asked him a
Right.
question, he said, yeah, it's grotty. You know, so absolutely brilliant. I'm sorry there, Bill, I'm sorry it was going Derek, I'm sorry I'm going on. So listen, tell us more about the early Beatles anyway, because to me, they fascinate me, and I'll tell you for why. I was 14 years of age when I seen them.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean,
go on, Bill.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, they were, as you were saying earlier, I mean, a unique place in rock and roll history. There's never been a Beatles before them, and there will almost certainly never be another Beatles again. But it all started for them when they were back in 1957, when John, his mate Pete Shotton, formed a group called the Blackjacks.
Oh,
And
right.
they changed the name shortly after that to the Quarrymen.
Oh.
And the Beatles' story really starts on the 6th of July 1957, when Paul met John. John was doing a gig with the Quarrymen, his band, skiffle band, at St Peter's Church Fete in Woolton.
Well, that's a famous photograph, isn't it, though?
Absolutely. There are 3 or 4 of them. There's one on the stage, and there's another series of 2 or 3 photographs of them when they're on the back of one of these low loaders.
Derek, you know, before you carry on, can you give us have you any idea? Because it's always fascinated me. That particular photograph where you see them on stage. It took them, was it a press fella or what is it? You know,
that would have been just one of the friends. It may well have been one of the parents. Cameras would have been expensive back in '57.
Yeah.
So it's not like nowadays when everybody's got a phone that takes photographs. I mean, then you have to stand still when you're having your photograph taken, because if you move, it was blurred.
Well, what's even more unbelievable than that, actually, I must admit, Frank and Derek, they found the rough copy of somebody recorded one of the songs when they were playing. So I think it's the only one that exists. They only found it was it the time just before the anthology came out?
Yeah.
I'm not too sure. I remember the song. It's an old blues riff, I think it is. But I remember at the time, I think they interviewed Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney said, it shows how raw it was, and kind of like John, you can tell, the strumming, he was only using 3 strings on his guitar.
Right.
Really? I always thought that, I always remember, I think it was Harrison, George, I think he was greatly underrated, talking about when they were playing in Hamburg, and they were saying that they were raw, they were rock and rollers, they were early rock and rollers before, the hands of the great Brian Epstein grabbed hold of them and just transformed them, didn't he, really, into like suits and ties, and took away the leather and like the Teddy Boy hairdos.
Well, that's right. I mean, he really changed their image, because they were modelling themselves on Gene Vincent.
Yeah.
With all the...
He loved Elvis as well, didn't he, Janet?
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, John was a big Elvis fan. I mean, he has been quoted as saying that before Elvis there was nothing. I don't know if I agree with him, because there's a heck of a lot of good R&B that came before Elvis, and blues. They were big fans of the whole 50s rock and roll scene. I mean, Paul used the Eddie Cochran's 20 Flight Rock as his audition piece, and John was very impressed, because Paul knew all the words to it. That's really how he ingratiated himself. Because George came along a little bit later, and he was that little bit younger than them, and John really was not quite sure whether they should have George on board, because he was that much younger.
Really?
When he at his sort of audition for John was deeply impressed with that, because Paul was the lead guitarist before that.
Really?
Yeah.
But apparently he got stage fright. He dried up a few times doing solos, so he was very keen to get George on board, who was a much more competent, even though he's younger. He was a competent guitarist, because he'd been in a band called the Rebels with his brother and a chum.
Go away. I didn't even know that. This is fascinating stuff for me, and the listeners, obviously, because because of it's just absolutely. We're getting a message
you
in now. Michael Carter again, and he's just turned around and said, "Well, could you ask Derek? Hang on, it's just hang on. Could you give us any idea or inkling of why Pete Best actually left the Beatles? That's such a. I know this is from me. I know he was on the "Love Me Do" song. So could you fill us in for me? You know, have you got any idea why Pete Best was sacked?
I think there's a few of them really. I've never seen a definitive official statement, but reading and listening to various people, a number of things are going down. I think one of the problems was that Pete Best was a good, typical of groups like that. A good drummer live, but a drummer in a studio needs to be a metronome. Needs to be a rock solid timing. And George, when he was producing, he didn't think Pete's drumming was accurate enough.
Is that George Martin?
George Martin, yeah.
Yeah,
I
heard him saying that. Yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there's other things as well. I mean, I did read a number of times that the others were maybe a little bit jealous of him. They felt he was the sort of good-looking one that all the girls went for.
You know what? No, that's one of the... That is... I heard that years ago.
Yeah.
The girls, they were looking at the back of the stage and ignoring, the front of the stage, so to speak.
Derek, I mean, I was going to say, because at the time, when they changed all the haircuts as well, wasn't it? Pete was not exactly in tune for changing the image and all that sort of thing as well. He was out of kilter with a lot of the Epstein's management ideas, and he was obviously very quiet as well, wasn't he?
That's right, and that was one of the other big things I read, was if you look at those Hamburg photos towards the end of the time, what happened was the Beatles got involved with...
Astrid, wasn't it?
Astrid, yeah. They got involved with the X's, which was sort of beatnik, existentialist X's. Not really hippie types, beatnik types. Mm-hmm. And they wore their hair in that brush-forward style. And it was for John's 21st birthday. John and Paul went off to sort of hitchhike. I think it was around Europe. They got as far as Paris. And they bumped into, I can't remember the guy's name now, but it was one of the guys from that X's group in Hamburg, and John and Paul persuaded him to, comb their hair, style their hair in that style. But apparently Pete Best wouldn't buy into that whole thing. So the other three guys were, very much with this new X's style fringe hairstyle, and Pete wasn't. So I think it's probably a combination of all of the things, because possibly if he'd been ultra popular with the rest of the band, even though George Martin, wasn't deeply impressed. I mean, he wasn't deeply impressed with Ringo the first time Ringo recorded, because there were 3 versions of Love Me Do. Pete did the first one, Ringo did the second one, and then they went into the studio for a third one, and a guy called Andy White, a session drummer, very, very good session drummer, he actually recorded it. So you've actually got 3 versions. And ironically, when the single was released in the UK on the original red label Parlophone, because Parlophone were about to change the colour of the label from red to black. So the original one was released on red, and that one was actually Ringo, although the album version was Andy White. So the only you can actually get the Pete Best one that's on the anthology, so you can get hold of all 3. Yeah.
Well, he played on My Bonnie as well, didn't he, Pete Best?
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I mean, he played on all that stuff.
Yeah, pretty good.
Hamburg did a couple of recordings there.
Well, Derek, I was always fascinated with this. The drummer issue is like before Pete. Who was there? Was there any? There must have. I mean, Paul did a bit of drumming. But there was anybody else that was in that mix before, and of course, was Ringo the first choice for when Pete left?
I think Ringo was probably the first choice. A number of questions there. I think Ringo almost certainly was the first choice because he'd stood in some recordings in Hamburg, and they knew him quite well because he was with
Rory Storm,
the Hurricanes. That's right. And it's almost certainly he was the first choice. But the drummer one's interesting. I mean, when Alan Williams actually set up the Hamburg gigs, he said, you've got the gig, but you've got to get yourself a permanent drummer. I mean, interesting enough, the closest they came to a permanent drummer before that was a guy called Tommy Moore. And interesting story with him, on May the 10th, 1960, the Beatles, or the Silver Beatles as they were then, failed their audition to become Billy Fiore's backing band.
My goodness.
Wow, go ahead.
Could you imagine that?
Yeah,
Whoa.
I mean, that was John Paul, George and Stuart's. Tommy Moore was actually late. And Johnny Hutchinson from the Big Three, he was the drummer. Well, he's actually cast in the Casanovas then. They hadn't become the Big Three yet. They were also auditioning for Billy Fiore, well, for the management and Billy Fiore. Tommy Moore was late. Johnny Hutchinson stood in, and he did, I think, turn up towards the end, and Tommy Moore took over. But they failed that audition, which is maybe why on the rooftop when John says at the end of their career, did we pass the audition?
Yeah.
That failed Billy Fiore audition in mind, because they also failed that, and they failed one, of course, on 1st of January 62.
Well, Ian Goldger has sent in a question, and he said, why was Stuart Sutcliffe known as the fifth Beatle?
Well, I
Because
suppose
he was always like known as the fifth Beatle, wasn't he? Really, Stuart Sutcliffe.
But I mean, technically, he was a member of the group called the Beatles. I mean, Tommy Moore was never in. Pete Best was the first Beatles drummer. I mean, they called themselves the Beatles when they went to Hamburg. So that first night they opened in Hamburg was the first night they ever played as the Beatles.
Now, we've got another question, if you don't mind, Terry.
Yeah, okay.
Right, and it's from Michael Carter, and he said, question, was it true John Lennon was going to move back to Liverpool before he was cruelly shot down?
I've never heard that one. To be honest, I'd be quite surprised because he fought very, very hard to stay in America because he was so much against the Vietnam War. The American authorities tried very, very hard to revoke his green card.
Yeah.
And he tried very, very hard to...
He'd be never though, wasn't it?
And he'd only just released, just before he was murdered, he released his last
Fantasy,
album 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
I've never read that he was. I can understand why he'd want to, of course.
But the thing is, well, I was told, I think it was with Andy Peebles when he said that he'd come back to Liverpool to do a gig with the rest of the lads. And he was...
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I think the reunion was always on the cards. I mean, there was a lot of animosity between, John and Paul mostly, I think. But you know, they actually did record different combinations of them. Actually, recorded together fairly regularly. They appeared on each other's albums.
Yeah.
So the possibility as time went on and wounds healed a bit. Of them, getting together, because John and Paul did play on a bootleg.
Really?
The middle 70s, I think it was. A Toot and a Snort in 74, I think it's called. So there's a clue. It must have been 1974.
Yeah.
A Toot and a Snort in 74. Stevie Wonder, I think, is on the same bootleg.
Go away.
So I think the chances of them coming back and playing a gig in Liverpool, I think if they'd ever got back together, the chances are it would have been Liverpool they'd have wanted to play at.
Definitely, I go along. Derek, it's been absolutely fascinating. Absolutely, for everyone's saying there, the messages are coming through, and they said, it's will you have them on again, because we can't get too much in the word the Beatles. So would you come on again?
I'd love to, but what I would like to say is that the book Rock and Roll Unravelled is actually available at Right Blend.
Well, I was just going to say, Right Blend, but where can we get hold of it?
Yeah, I mean, Right Blend, it's there sitting, waiting, poised.
Okay.
Is
there any signed ones? Have you signed any?
I think that the two are they've got 2 copies on the shelf, and I think they're both signed.
Oh, brilliant.
Well, one will be gone tomorrow because I'll be going down.
Well, John's definitely going to get one.
Doing an event at Right Blend in February, I think.
Oh, are you, Derek? Yeah, you're there in Feb?
That's right.
Blend, yeah.
February the 17th, I'm actually doing a book signing there.
Well, will you come on before then, and we'll chat about that?
Absolutely, that'd be brilliant.
Oh, absolutely brilliant. That's great. That's absolutely splendid, and people are absolutely delighted with your contribution tonight and getting to know these things that we never even had a clue. And there is one last one. Do you think the American authorities had him shot dead because he was a thorn in their side? Well, I wouldn't like you to answer that, because we want to finish on a high positive. And what we're going to say to you, Derek, is wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll have you on before the signing on the 15th of Feb.
Excellent. 17th, absolutely.
Well, okay, the 17th then.
I'd love to come back on and chat to you, mate.
Oh, thank you, Derek. You're a wonderful person, and that's been absolutely wonderful. And John wants to say something.
Yeah, absolutely, really interesting. Actually, it'd be a bit more next time you come on to talk about the Johnny Gustafson and the Johnny Hutchinson sort of angle on the Beatles as well. But thank you very much. I've really enjoyed that.
See, that was his radio voice. He usually talks like me.
Right.
You don't know what to say there, do you, Derek?
I've lost the words.
Oh, no, you know, yeah. And listen, honestly, all the best, and we'll have you on. It is fascinating stuff. Everyone's saying all the best to you as well. Thank you, Derek.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much.
No, thank you.
Great to talk to you all.
Thank you. Anyway, that's it. And what do you think of that?
Really interesting. There's so many other things you can ask. So many different things you can go into. But even though with the rumour about John Lennon's coming back, he's having a bit of a problem with Yoko, and he had that 14 mailing, and there was all sorts of rumours, but I think his family maintain.
Oh, Michael Carter says he sent in that thing, he said he should have let him answer it. About the American authorities. Well, it's all conspiracy.
It's conspiracy, really. Nothing proven.
Anyway, well, what we'll do